The Kennedy Center shimmered under a cascade of golden light, its grand auditorium a beacon of elegance and prestige. The annual Arts and Politics Dialogue, a hallmark event that drew the nation's most influential figures, had reached its pinnacle with a panel poised to explore the intricate dance between Hollywood's storytelling and Washington's political machinery. The audience, a vibrant mosaic of political elites, media moguls, and entertainment luminaries, filled every seat, their anticipation palpable. Seated stage right were two titans of cinema, Morgan Freeman and Robert Dairo, their combined presence an almost tangible force. Freeman, with his resonant voice that had narrated everything from nature documentaries to presidential campaigns, exuded the gravitas of an elder statesman. His lined face, etched with decades of wisdom, commanded respect. Dairo, equally formidable, carried an intensity honed through transformative performances and a reputation for unfiltered political commentary. Together, they embodied Hollywood's old guard, their decades of acclaim lending them an aura of untouchable authority. Across the stage sat Caroline Leavitt, a 25-year-old whose meteoric rise had made her the youngest White House press secretary in American history. Her appointment had shattered historical precedents, but it came with a relentless barrage of scrutiny. Critics, from pundits to political operatives, argued that her youth, barely a few years removed from college, rendered her ill-equipped for the high-stakes role of speaking for the administration. Supporters countered that her poise, intellectual agility, and ability to distill complex policies into clear messages demonstrated a maturity far beyond her years. Yet, regardless of political leanings, Leavitt faced a unique challenge, a skepticism rooted in her age that older appointees rarely encountered. On this stage, facing two cultural icons with a combined 167 years of life experience, she appeared remarkably composed, her calm demeanor belying the storm about to erupt. The panel was introduced with fanfare, its stated purpose to bridge divides through a thoughtful discussion of arts funding, free speech, and the symbiotic relationship between Hollywood and Washington. Cabinet secretaries, congressional leaders, network executives, and A-list celebrities filled the audience, their presence underscoring the event's significance. The moderator, a seasoned journalist with a knack for navigating high-profile discussions, opened with a question about how entertainment could amplify civic engagement. Freeman responded first, his voice a soothing balm as he spoke of storytelling's power to shape public consciousness, drawing on his experience narrating films that had moved millions. Dairo followed, his tone sharper, emphasizing the responsibility of artists to challenge political narratives rather than reinforce them. Leavitt, in her turn, spoke of the press's role in fostering transparency, stressing that clear communication between government and citizens was the bedrock of democracy. The exchange was polite, even predictable, until Dairo's demeanor shifted. Leaning forward, his eyes locking onto Leavitt with the intensity that had chilled audiences in his most iconic roles, Dairo interjected, "You know what I find fascinating," he said, his voice carrying a razor's edge. "How someone your age, with so little life experience, can stand at that podium every day and defend policies that will hurt the very generation you represent." The auditorium fell silent, the air thick with tension. Freeman nodded, his deep voice lending weight to Dairo's words. "I've been alive 3 times longer than you, young lady. I've seen what happens when we abandon truth for convenient narratives. Camera phones rose like a wave across the audience, capturing the moment as the panel veered from collegial discourse into confrontation. Leavitt's expression remained neutral, her eyes steady as she absorbed the unexpected attack from two of America's most revered actors. The personal nature of their critique, zeroing in on her age and perceived inexperience, crossed the boundaries of typical panel decorum, transforming a policy discussion into a public trial. The moderator, visibly flustered, attempted to steer the conversation back. "Perhaps we could return to the question about arts funding," he suggested, his voice strained. Dairo waved him off, undeterred. "No, this is important. The American people deserve authentic leadership, not rehearsed talking points from someone who was in college when many of today's problems began." Freeman echoed the sentiment, his tone measured but firm. "Youth has its virtues, but wisdom requires time and experience. There's no shortcut to understanding the complexities of governance." For Freeman and Dairo, the moment carried little professional risk. As Hollywood royalty in their twilight years, their reputations were unassailable, their cultural capital vast. Freeman, an Oscar winner whose voice had become synonymous with authority, had grown increasingly vocal about progressive causes, lending his influence to movements that resonated with his values. Dairo, a two-time Academy Award winner, had built a career on transformative performances and a willingness to speak bluntly, his appearances at rallies and award shows often sparking headlines with their unfiltered critiques of conservative politics. Together, they wielded a moral and cultural authority that few could challenge, particularly a young political figure untested in their arena. For Leavitt, however, the stakes were monumental. A misstep, a defensive retort, or a faltering response could cement narratives about her inexperience, potentially becoming a viral embarrassment that would haunt her career. With smartphones recording and political staffers exchanging nervous glances, every word she spoke would be dissected, every expression analyzed. The audience, a microcosm of Washington and Hollywood's elite, watched with bated breath. Leavitt's rapid ascent had already made her a lightning rod. After serving as an assistant press secretary in a previous administration at just 23, she had returned to claim the top role, a position that placed her at the heart of national and international scrutiny. Her youth, while a point of pride for her supporters, was a constant target for detractors who saw it as a liability. Leavitt straightened her papers, took a measured breath, and leaned towards her microphone. The room fell silent, the audience expecting either timidity from being starstruck or defensiveness from a seasoned operative. Instead, they witnessed something extraordinary. "Mr. Freeman, Mr. Dairo," she began, her voice steady and imbued with respect. "First, let me say what an honor it is to share this stage with you both. Your films have shaped American culture in profound ways, from inspiring hope to challenging injustice." The acknowledgement, sincere and unexpected, seemed to momentarily disarm the actors, who might have braced for immediate pushback. "Mr. Dairo, you mentioned that when you were my age, you were still figuring yourself out. That's not unique to your generation. I'm figuring myself out too, every single day. The difference is, I'm doing it while cameras document every word and expression." She paused, her gaze meeting both actors with unflinching clarity. Here's what I know for certain about myself. I grew up in Atkinson, a small New Hampshire town where my parents ran a hardware store. They never made Hollywood money, but they taught me more about integrity, perseverance, and hard work than any Ivy League degree could provide. They showed me what it means to serve a community, to listen to people whose lives are shaped by the policies I discuss. The mention of her modest roots shifted the room's atmosphere. Audience members, who had been relishing the confrontation, now leaned forward, their curiosity piqued by her grounded authenticity. "Mr. Freeman, you spoke about humility. You're absolutely right that it comes before authority. Every morning, when I walk into the White House past portraits of leaders who shaped history, I feel the weight of that humility. I know I haven't lived through the wars, recessions, or social upheavals you've witnessed. I know there are experiences I haven't had, and wisdom I'm still gaining." Freeman's expression softened, though he maintained his composed demeanor. Leavitt continued, her voice gaining strength without losing its measured cadence. "But respectfully, gentlemen, when did we decide that age is the only metric for understanding? When did we determine that years lived is the sole qualification for public service?" She glanced at the audience, her words resonating with younger attendees who had faced similar dismissals. "My generation has grown up with challenges unique to our time. We've never known an America that wasn't at war. We graduated into the worst economy since the Great Depression, carrying student debt that dwarfs anything previous generations faced. We're watching climate change reshape our future in real time, forcing us to grapple with questions of survival and responsibility." Dairo shifted in his seat, his earlier confrontational posture easing as Leavitt spoke without the defensiveness or polished talking points he had anticipated. "I stand at that podium, not because I believe I know everything," Leavitt said, "but because I believe diverse perspectives strengthen our democracy. That includes generational diversity, which brings fresh eyes to problems that have persisted for decades." The audience, regardless of political affiliation, seemed captivated. What had begun as an ambush was transforming into a nuanced exchange about experience, representation, and the meaning of qualification in a fractured political landscape. "You both have spoken powerfully throughout your careers about inclusion and breaking barriers," Leavitt noted, her tone deliberate. "You've advocated for creating space for voices that have been historically excluded, whether because of race, gender, or circumstance. I would hope that extends to young Americans who seek to serve their country, even if their perspectives challenge the status quo." The comment landed with precision, highlighting a potential contradiction between the actors' publicly stated values and their current critique. Several audience members nodded, recognizing the rhetorical deftness of her point. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of admiration and surprise at her ability to turn the tables without resorting to hostility. As Leavitt prepared to continue, a voice called out from the audience, a rare breach of the Kennedy Center's formal decorum. "Answer the question. What qualifies you?" The interruption, sharp and insistent, drew gasps from some attendees but seemed to energize Leavitt rather than unsettle her. She nodded, acknowledging the challenge directly. "Fair question. Let me be clear about my qualifications," she said, setting aside her notes with a gesture that signaled unscripted candor. I've served in two White House administrations, first as an assistant press secretary at 23, then in this role. I've worked in communications during national crises, from economic downturns to international conflicts. I hold degrees in political science and communications from respected institutions. I've briefed presidents before they address world leaders, ensuring their messages are clear and accurate. She paused, her eyes scanning the room before returning to the actors. But my most important qualification may be that I don't pretend to have all the answers. When I don't know something, I seek out the experts who do. My job isn't to be the authority on every policy. It's to communicate the administration's positions clearly and honestly, even when the questions are tough or the answers unpopular. Dairo leaned forward, his initial hostility tempered, but his skepticism still evident. "That sounds noble," he said, "but when you're defending policies that hurt the most vulnerable," Leavitt interjected, her voice firm yet respectful. "Mr. Dairo, I respect your right to disagree with the administration's policies. That's the foundation of democracy. But I'd ask you to consider that disagreement doesn't automatically make the other side callous or uninformed. Good people can reach different conclusions about complex problems." The exchange had evolved beyond the initial ambush into a substantive dialogue about age, experience, and the moral weight of political representation. The audience, initially primed for a spectacle, now listened with rapt attention, sensing the rarity of such an authentic confrontation. Freeman, whose silence had been commanding, leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Miss Leavitt, while I appreciate your composure, there's something fundamental you're missing. When you defend policies that many consider harmful, you're not just communicating, you're enabling. At what point does personal conscience enter the equation?" The question, delivered with the gravitas of a man who had narrated humanity's triumphs and tragedies, shifted the discussion to the moral dimensions of her role, a deeper and more profound challenge. Leavitt took a moment, her expression serious but composed. "Mr. Freeman, that's perhaps the most important question anyone could ask someone in my position. If I may, I'd like to share something personal that I've never discussed publicly." The unexpected pivot sent a ripple of curiosity through the room. Even Dairo, who had been preparing a follow-up critique, leaned back, intrigued. "My grandfather was a World War II veteran," Leavitt began, her voice softer but clear, carrying to every corner of the auditorium. "He landed at Normandy and fought across Europe, carrying shrapnel in his leg until the day he died. Before he passed, he gave me his combat medal and told me something I've carried every day since. Service isn't about comfort or personal gain. It's about putting something larger than yourself at the center of your decisions, even when it's hard." She paused, her eyes glistening, but her composure intact. "I keep that medal in my desk drawer at the White House. On the most difficult days, when I'm grappling with the moral questions you're raising, Mr. Freeman, I hold it and ask myself what service truly means." Freeman's expression changed, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. His own father had been a World War II veteran, a detail Leavitt couldn't have known, but which resonated deeply. "I don't stand at that podium because I agree with every policy," Leavitt continued. "I stand there because I believe in the institutions of democracy, in the peaceful transition of power, and in the necessity of honest communication between government and citizens. especially when people disagree with the administration's positions. Dairo, his tone probing but less combative, interjected. There must be lines you wouldn't cross, positions you couldn't defend. Leavitt replied firmly, absolutely. If those lines were crossed, I'd resign immediately. That I haven't reflects my moral assessment, even if it differs from yours. She met both actors' gazes. You've played characters facing tough ethical choices, showing audiences the complexity of hard truths. Governance is just as complex. Some see policies as harmful, others believe they'll bring long-term good. That's the tension I navigate. Her directness, tying their acting to her role, resonated. Don't dismiss me for my age, Leavitt said, her voice steady, or assume I lack morals because I serve an administration you oppose. I ask for what my grandfather fought for, to be judged by my character and words, not preconceptions. Her civil rights reference, bold for a conservative, struck Freeman, who nodded, recognizing its power. Leavitt pulled out a worn photograph. This is my grandfather, on Victory Day, with men of different backgrounds, united beyond politics. He said war made disagreements seem small. They never doubted each other's decency. Dairo, whose father was a veteran, softened visibly. You asked what qualifies me, Leavitt continued. It's my belief we can disagree without demonizing, question positions without attacking character. The Kennedy Center fell silent, the moment shifting from confrontation to connection. If my age disqualifies me, so be it, she concluded, but fresh perspectives might help our divided culture see new possibilities. Freeman, moved, said, that wasn't what I expected. Dairo added, my father had a similar photo. Same war. Both apologized for their age-based critique, and as applause erupted, they shook Leavitt's hand, their exchange a viral testament to shared humanity.